Hi, everyone. John Michael Coppola here, and welcome to the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast, where we chat with the actors, directors, choreographers, designers, and producers shaping the Chicagoland area's one-of-a-kind theater scene. We're so excited that you're here with us today, but before we get started, I just want to remind you to please like, subscribe to, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues who you think would appreciate the conversations we're having. We'd be so grateful to have your support in this way so that we can continue to bring these stories for years to come. Thanks again for being here, and now, curtain up on today's episode. Kokandy Productions is one of Chicago's premier storefront theater companies. Created in 2011, they have been nominated for 101 non-equity Jeff Awards with countless wins, including 5 for last season's Into the Woods. Under the leadership of Scot and Derek Van Barham, they have built a reputation that in every way aligns with the company's mission: to leverage the heightened reality of musical theater to tell complex and challenging stories, with a focus on contributing to the development of Chicago-based musical theater artists and new musical theater works, while raising the profile of Chicago's storefront musical theater community. Anyone who has seen a Kokandy production can attest that they are doing just that to great success. Their current production of Amelie has been acclaimed by audiences and critics alike and is currently running through September 28th. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Scot Kokandy and Derek Van Barham. Now let's go to the top of the show. Hi, Derek. Hi, Scot. How are you both doing?
Hello.
Good. Hello.
Thanks for joining me on the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast. So, as is our custom here, we like to always ask our guests from the very top of the show where you grew up, a little bit about your background, a little bit about your training, and most importantly, your first theatrical experience. Derek, why don't we start with you? We'll go alphabetically.
Oh my goodness. So excited to be here. I grew up in Mississippi. I've been in Chicago since 2008, so it's been a minute. But went to school at the University of Mississippi, got my BFA in acting, and then I knew I wanted to move to Chicago because for a while I thought I wanted to do comedy and improv, and like Chicago's the place to go for that. So I came up here for one weekend to the some unified grad school auditions just to basically be in Chicago for the weekend, and got into a great graduate program here in Chicago at Roosevelt. And so moved to Chicago to do grad school and improv classes and work overnight shifts at Starbucks like we all do when we're 20. And yeah, have been here ever since. And yeah, just kind of accidentally drifted into directing and choreographing. All of my technical on paper training is as a performer, but I think that really lends itself to being a good director and choreographer because I've been on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
And then as far as like kind of like first experiences go, I grew up in a pretty rural part of Mississippi, like very, very country, and I love it. But there was just no access to theater really until like I was in high school. I out of nowhere got to go see a community theater production of Grease. And there it was. I was like, oh my God, they sing and they dance and they have slicked hair and they're all so handsome. The women too. Everybody was handsome in that production.
Yeah.
And just kind of like fell in love with it, and then just slowly started gravitating toward it. Admittedly, a lot through speech and debate. That was the program that my high school did have, and that's what got me to Ole Miss, was a scholarship to do speech and debate, and so. But really, theater didn't happen until college and afterward. But yeah, that's how I got here. Been here since 2008, and acted for a little bit, then slowly started shifting toward directing and choreographing, and then right before the shutdown, I believe it was 2018, found this guy named Scot Kokandy who was looking for a new artistic director, and he put me through all the interviews, and here we are.
The rest, they say, is history. That's right.
Yep.
Which is the perfect segue to hear from you, Mr. Kokandy. Tell us about your background.
Yeah, so grew up in Northwest Indiana, right over the border, but basically been in Chicagoland my entire life. From, like I said, grew up in Hammond, spent some time in the suburbs. Now I'm back in Indiana, but never lived closer to the city than I do now. I'm literally right over the border. And in grade school, high school, did theater, and I think one of the my first professional theater experiences was a tour of Jesus Christ Superstar at the Star Plaza Theater in Maryville, which
Yeah.
is no longer there. And I was fortunate to my parents and aunts and uncles would take me to the city and see things, and like yeah, early at an early age, loved theater. I think I loved the that you could go for 2 hours, 3 hours, and escape reality and be transported to various places and worlds.
Yeah, that's a pretty common theme for the both of you that
Mhm.
I've heard from previous guests. Is it was a family love of the theater or of music, and they would take the kids there, and that's when they first had their first taste, if you will, and they were hooked. It's a pretty common theme. So now, Scott, you would live close to Chicago. Derek, what made you come to Chicago? What brought you here?
Yeah, just improv.
Oh, right, you
Well,
said
and
that. You did say that,
oh,
correct?
well, I mean, to be a bit more specific, I had so when I was a freshman at Ole Miss, there were a few seniors who had like started their own improv team, were like really kind of like into long form comedy, which is like Chicago improv's bread and butter.
Yeah,
And they moved to Chicago. So like all the time while I was in college, I would take trips. I came up here for Lollapalooza every year. I would do Second City summer intensives, and almost just kind of had a bit of a nest prepared in
nice.
Chicago. And yeah, I think I knew Chicago was where I was going to go, especially having come from the country. You
Yeah,
know, like I describe this to all of my family members still. Chicago just feels like a giant small town to me. Like the way the neighborhoods are set up, how wide it is. It's like that perfect mix between, New York is so like tall and squished, and LA is so spread out. And this
yeah,
is like to Goldilocks it a bit. This is just right. And just fell in love with it every trip. And it's a city that at least, currently can afford to live in. So like,
yeah.
unless a gig were to take me somewhere, like love this city and we'll be
Right.
here for always.
I can't agree with you more. My wife and I came here in 2007 when I was cast to do Jersey Boys downtown. And my plan was, well, we'll go for a year and then we'll move back to, we were living in New Jersey at the time. We had a house there. And after about, 3 or 4 months here, I came home from the show one night and my wife and I are, just chatting in bed while we're trying to fall asleep. And I happened to mention that once again. And she kind of looked at me and said, you know, I really don't see that as a possibility. It was really expensive to move here and to move back again anytime in the future. I'd be, I feel much better if you didn't keep repeating that ideal because I
Yeah,
don't think it's going to happen. And quite frankly, it hadn't even really dawned on me until she said it. And she was right. But as the longer we lived here, the more we fell in love with it. And we're in Skokie. We love it here. As you said, it's affordable. Skokie happens to be close to everything. Within 20 minutes, you're exactly where you want to
sure.
be. So yeah, I could see why it was such an attractive option for you back then, and it still held. I was here only a year before you, so even from then till now,
Well,
it still ticks all those boxes for us.
well, and there's just so much work here. So like it's great to be an audience member in Chicago.
Yeah,
Like as much as it is to be an artist. Like you can just, and we do to a fault. Like you can just do show after show after show after show.
yeah,
But you can all, there's just so much to see. And, and
yeah,
and so much of the really really great stuff that's either like New York or LA bound either starts here, or it's the first stop on the tour,
yeah.
or it's in development here, or like it just feels like such a great little like nexus for just really great theater.
1,000%. And that actually brings me to my next question, Scott. I know you had experience as an actor, but being a producer, that's not for the faint of heart. So, with all the theater that's available in Chicago, what gave you the idea to produce theater, become a producer, start your own company? And clearly, you've been doing it to great success. You're here, 12, 13 years later. So, I'm just curious, what gave you that spark of inspiration to start this?
Yeah, I think so for kind of like I said, grade school, high school, family would take me to shows, and so I was seeing things. I saw Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Chicago Theater with Donny Osmond, I'm pretty sure. So I was in early life exposed to the touring shows,
Right.
and then later in life I was exposed to um, theater at a smaller scale, 25 seats, and you had to go around the corner to the cafe if you wanted to use a bathroom. So so when my mind was open to the fact that, oh, like, you don't need 1,500 seats and tens and tens of thousands of dollars to put on a show, it can be as simple as find a room, find some actors. So that experience, being exposed to the storefront theater, of Chicago, um, opened my eyes to that as a possibility.
Yeah.
And then um, my kind of part of my brain is creative, part of my mind is like business and putting things together. So I said, well, let's give it a try. Let's put on a show. Like, let me apply for royalties for a show. Let me get some people to do it. So
Yeah.
it was really, but the start of it was just being exposed to, non-equity storefront theater in Chicago, and then me saying, yeah, let's give it a try. And here we
Wow.
are 12, 13 years later.
That's incredible. Now, how did you find your way over to the Chopin Theater? So you've been there for a couple seasons now.
Yeah, so we started our first, I guess half of Kokandy Productions life. We were looking for a theater, and I remember walking around Lakeview, and Theater Wit wasn't even, I don't even think they were like finished, or they were almost finished, and we
Yeah.
stumbled upon Theater Wit, and it was like, oh, there's 3 theaters in here, we could rent it. Great. So and that worked out fantastic. They were great partners. I think we had been in all 3 of those theater spaces in the course of 6 or 7 years. And then when Derek and I chose to do the show 100 Days, we thought that the show, and for like the vibe of the show and the audience experience for the show, we thought, let's try something different. And we had both been in the Chopin basement for things, and they were wanting to work with us, so we said, yeah, like, this is the show to kind of, for the show, to take down to the Chopin basement.
Yeah.
And we haven't left. It's we haven't left.
That's
So
great.
it's been great, and they've been great partners as well.
And then this fall, you're going to be in the upstairs, the big room for Jekyll and Hyde, which is going to be a treat.
Yeah. Yeah, our first time. Yeah, so we've been in the basement for several years, and I mean, one of the fun things of the basement, and I mean, we like playing with it, and audiences like it, is that no configuration has ever been the same of all the shows we've done down there.
Yeah.
But yeah, given Jekyll and Hyde and the show, and Derek and I don't like to be bored, and let's try something different. So let's challenge ourselves, and take Jekyll and Hyde up to the main stage. Yeah, so we were on a call prior to this, planning that out. We're about 60 days away from first preview.
My God, fantastic! I can't wait
Stop.
to see it. You're scaring Derek. Derek, as the artistic director of now Kokandy, you've been artistic director with Ruckus and Pride Film and Plays. Tell me how those prior experiences shaped your artistic vision to be the artistic director of Kokandy, because you've been here. This has been your longest stretch than any of it prior to. Am I correct?
It has, goodness. Yeah. So the Ruckus, well, and all 3 companies, had like really great foundations when I started collaborating with them. And the Ruckus was, one of those companies. A bunch of friends from Western Michigan started a theater company. All moved to Chicago, as so many of us do. And what I loved about the Ruckus was the focus was on entirely on new work, but specifically on devising in the room with the playwright present. And I think that's something I've always held on to, of like the ability, like, is the page can change. Like it was so great to like be a and I acted in rucka shows, I directed rucka shows, I like helped do like writing workshops, but just that sense of like that the page could change from day to day was really thrilling.
Yeah.
And then with Pride, I met David Zach, who was the former artistic director there, while I was at Roosevelt. He was one of the adjunct faculty there, and he
Wow.
was just starting the company. And he was like, it's going to be like super queer centric, which and I just moved to Chicago, was in my like second or third year of just being fully out to any and everyone. And so I was like, yes, sign me up, sign me up. And so I think both of those still influence what I love about what we do at Kokandy, which is, treating everything from new work to masterpieces like Sweeney and Into the Woods as if they are new work.
Hmm.
Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it right now? It's happening in real space and time, in this room at this moment with this audience. How can it still be alive and different and change? So I think that just in the way we approach shows that have been done in Chicago before still very much has that mindset.
Yeah.
How are we making it a new work? And then with pride, queer characters and queer storytelling are near and dear to my heart. And I always tried, if it's not explicit in the material, I feel like there's always a way to tease it out. And so always kind of aim for that. So, yeah, I think, yeah, very much those two companies are two very big influences and kind of important to the process that I feel like I go through now with any show.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that about being a sort of and Scott as well, being sort of a dynamic space. Because my conversation with the Marriott just last week, we had a very similar touch point in our conversation, being that they're in the round. You kind of can't hide very much. They always have to sort of expand their imagination on how to put certain shows on their stage because they're just a very different space than a lot of others in town. And you guys do it, with great brilliance. I mean, I saw Sweeney there. Of course, I saw Trailer Park back in the day. Was at Theater Wit, which is a very different space. But I walked into Amelie and I was like, oh, we're facing this way today because
Yeah.
we were sat on the other side of the house for Sweeney's Hot. I'm curious. You guys have had such success with your Jeff Awards the last couple of years, winning a number of them for your productions, and the Equity Jeff Awards were just announced. So I'm curious about, as you build out your seasons from year to year, do you feel like you have to maintain a certain level or repeat your past successes with, we have to get that Jeff Award this year? Or do you just sort of let that roll off your back and just do the theater you want to do? And that's not an important facet of your decision making.
That's an excellent question. Yeah, I mean, I think, I know we're not supposed to like awards or care about awards, and they mean nothing, and it's all about the art and all of that good stuff. And of course, that's true. But more than anything, for me, what the Jeff Awards represent are one night a year where we all get together and celebrate. And so, whether it's a win or a nomination or just being invited and a discount ticket is always, like just being in that room, I think, is what's most important to me. And we always try to find ways to make sure it's accessible for our full cast to come. Like, so for us, it's really like a season reunion, like whether the show's nominated for best production or not, we like try to help cover tickets for the cast and like just make sure that we can all get together again. And that to me is the most important part of it. Um, and in terms of like, we won once, do we want to? It feels great to win. Like it's lovely, but I do think sort of the big part of that is the community aspect, because despite having such this like broad, huge, diverse Chicago theater community, we don't have a ton of opportunities where we really all come together and celebrate.
Hmm.
There's no like Chicago theater kickoff party or anything like that. The league tries to do some of that programming, but a lot of time it's a little more networking focused, or it's like the marketers getting together, or just artistic directors. So for
Right.
me currently, like what the Jeffs is, I mean, we call it theater prom. It's just a chance to like get together and hang out and really celebrate each other. So as long as like we're able to continue being part of that, I'm very satisfied.
That's a great
Yeah,
answer.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd piggyback off of that. I think with Jeff nominations or awards or what critics will say, I always try to focus on we focus on stay focused on controlling what we can control, and that is none of that stuff. What we can control is putting on the best show possible, and what's going to kind of happen from that is going to happen. So we continue to try to select um, shows that I would say that we think are quite frankly are going to sell tickets, right? I
Sure.
mean, if we don't sell tickets, there's not going to be any more awards.
Yeah.
So we that's our selection process, and we try to put it on in the best, most creative way we can, and like Derek said, yeah, if awards and critical positive acclaim come, that's icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say one place that it does help is actually outside of Chicago. I think it helps raise the awareness of the company in other cities. Like, it's great to get like Instagram messages from people, in New York, and be like, "Oh my God, I see what you're doing with American Psycho. Congrats on winning the awards." And as we continue to, figure out like what our exact container is in terms of like how big the company's going to be, how many shows we're going to do a year, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's helpful when we're reaching out to people outside of Chicago, like because we've got our eyes on Dead Outlaw and Teeth the Musical, and to be able to like reach out to those writers directly and say like, hey, like this is who we are as a company, and also like here's some accolades to show that at least some circles really laud what we do. Like
Yeah.
it's helpful, it helps, to pitch ourselves as a producing entity to either emerging artists or people with shows that are sort of like stuck in some sort of limbo, that we can be like, hey, look, like we've got a great track record with like edgy Chicago premieres, from Heathers to Head Over Heels to American Psycho, like that's a very specific lane of contemporary programming,
Sure.
that when you throw a couple of Jeff Awards in with that and some critics quotes, it's like, oh, it becomes like almost like a little CV for the company to say like, hey, trust us with your work. So I think it helps in that, and sort of attracting artists who may not be as familiar with us. So for that, very appreciative of it.
Huh. Can either of you think of a production you've done where the final product exceeded your initial vision?
Oh no, of course. I hope it's happened. I mean, Sweeney's the first one that comes to mind. I feel like,
The oft
yeah,
revived Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
people keep asking for it. Yeah, I mean, for me as a director and as an artistic director, there were just so much pride in that production, because there were so many question marks going into it. We were trying in the round. It was our second show in the basement at Chopin. So it was really sort of, no, it wasn't. It was our third. I was
Third,
about to
yeah,
tell a lie.
third,
But
yeah.
it was, I mean, just continuing to test, like Sondheim, Cruel Intentions in a basement. Like, yeah, that's like a 90s rave, but like Sondheim in a basement, can it be done? Like there were just, I guess, some bigger question marks around it. And that it came off being so critically and commercially successful, but also just really. Can we swear? Are we
Sure.
allowed? It was really fucking good.
It was good. Yeah.
And just like and so that for it was just like a relief, because for me personally, it was taking a lot of what I talked about previously with like experience with Ruckus and Pride, which is, tended to be doing smaller, like grittier works. And it's like, oh, okay, like what is it to like apply some of that process onto, one of the greatest musicals ever written. And
Right.
it was just had a cast that was just down to try stuff. And we learned so much through that production, and so many of the artists who worked on that have worked with us on almost every show since. It to a certain extent kind of felt like we found a lot of our family in that show.
Oh, nice.
A lot of, we don't have an ensemble, like an official like artistic ensemble or anything like that, but it felt like that's where we found a lot of our people.
Yeah.
um and so yeah, just loved that experience so much, and just yeah.
So I want to continue talking with you for a second, Derek. Scott, you can hang out and listen. But I have to talk about Amelie, because my wife and I loved it. Our son loved it. He started it on a separate night. And what struck us was the multi-talented cast. Everybody's playing three instruments. I chatted with Scott during intermission. I need to know a little bit about how this was constructed. Is the multi-instrumentalist take on this show written in the production notes? Is that your idea? And how all of that gets pieced together? I'm sure your music director had a big hand in that. So talk me through this process, because it was stunning and fascinating to watch.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, Amelie as a show went on a bit of a journey, right? You know,
Right.
it was this early aughties movie that people just loved to death. It was one of the first films I saw in college that made me feel like I was a cinephile. You know, I bought the DVD and I proudly displayed it, and it meant that I was a curious person who liked art. It said a lot about me. And then the musical didn't do too well on
I
Broadway.
remember, sadly.
And then but they kept working on it, and I'm really glad they did. So it went over to the West End, and that's where a lot of the actor musician implementing started to happen. They reworked the book, they reorganized some songs, they
I see.
changed the structure a little bit. And what is currently licensed now that we're doing is kind of a hybrid of both. So people ask, like, is this more like the Broadway or more like the London? And we're like, oh, it's a little bit of both. And it even, and what was most daunting from the beginning was we weren't quite sure what we were going to be getting, because everything listed, Scott, is this Concord or MTI?
Yeah,
Which one?
Concord, yeah.
Concord,
Concord,
you
yeah.
know, it mentions, it's the orchestrations from one, but the arrangements from another. It maintains some of the book of one, but the songs. So there was kind of a big question mark at the beginning of like what we were actually going to receive materials wise.
Right.
But hiring had co-music directors on this one for this specific reason, because it was like, oh, there's a lot to unpack and we're not even sure what it's going to be yet. So TJ Anderson and Anna Wegner like divided and conquered in such a lovely way. One of them really focused on vocals, one of them really focused on the sort of like band musician aspect of it. But so yeah, totally not our idea, but I think in listening to the London recording, which is on Spotify, you can just hear how the piece became just a little more ensemble centric, which I
Yeah.
think is something I'm always drawn to, and Kokandy has really become known for the past couple of years, is just these ensemble driven shows. They kind of, it doesn't decentralize Amelie in any way. She's still the title character. The world revolves around her, but it just became a bit more curious about all the people around her.
Yeah.
And with that, it was like, oh, I think that's what we want to do. Like, it's invite everybody into this immersive world with all of these quirky characters. As long as Amelie's still on stage, we're seeing and experiencing it with her.
Right.
But just seeing the success that it had in the West End and just what it could do to the music. I think kind of from the beginning it was like, oh, that's the version we want to do, so definitely kind of like inspired by what they did in the West End while working with this sort of hybrid bunch of materials that we were given.
Yeah.
And what else? Yeah, and Chicago's just so full of these incredible like quadruple threats,
Yeah.
who are
I'll
able to
say.
do, and some of them Quinn Rigg, who's in the show, has he was our Pirelli in Sweeney. He was in Alice by Heart last summer. Like we've always known he could play violin, but like Sonia Goldberg, who was our baker's wife and in American Psycho, had no idea she could play the cello. Like, and she's like, I haven't picked it up in 6 years. Like, thank you so much for this opportunity to like re-engage with this side of my creativity that I haven't in so
Wow.
long. Um, and we always kind of said, we would aim for actor musicians, but we would only do as much as it made sense to do with the group that we cast. And
Yeah.
my goodness, they showed up with guitars, with two cellos, just a ridiculous amount of talent in the cast. And then
Yeah.
Anna and TJ kind of like worked with what we had to, yeah, kind of find like what our version of it is.
So did he have to reorchestrate any of it, or did they just say, "Does anybody
Nope.
play this?" And they said, "Yeah, I do."
That, yeah, the piano kind of takes on anything that we don't have, but everything else, occasionally it would be like swapping, a trombone line onto a ukulele, like stuff like that,
And that trombone came out of nowhere. And my wife literally turned to me and said, "Did she just play a trombone?" Because
I
like
know.
she's sitting by her, and that was and we both were just dumbstruck
Well,
the entire
because it's
show.
like there's a trombone book for the whole show, and it was like, man, if we can just make it happen for one song, you know.
It's phenomenal. It was so good. I'm so glad to learn how that all came together because it really struck me for days. I was just thinking about the amount of work.
Yeah, and so much of it was work that so yeah, so like, if I were to like put it in writing, inspired by what they did in London, but really our team, TJ and Anna and the cast specifically,
Right.
and Matt our Matt Reich, our sound designer, and our engineers like really did sort of like craft like what our version of the show could
and,
be.
and the sound was pristine. We were sitting, I don't know, if this is the stage, we were over here, like right near the entrance, and
Hmm.
you could hear everything, and you could see everything, of
Awesome.
course. But literally, there was not a sound that was outside. And if you didn't see it, you heard it, and then you started like, oh, where am I hearing that? Oh, there it is. But you literally
Okay.
heard everything at every moment. I mean, that's what's so fascinating about the job of that your actors and MDs did, but also in the space that you're in with the lighting and the sound. It's I know you're saying it's storefront, but this may be a misnomer or just a failing on my part. I think of storefront as being very bare and much less resources than you guys have. And that's why I took a look at this production. I just went, this is more than I expected for this show because I didn't even know the show. So I was going there with no expectations with it. And I just walked out of there and I was just blown away. I can't say enough about it because
Thank you.
it was just top to bottom. Just my wife and I walked out, and the woman greeting us as we left, saying, "Have a good night." We just were so effusive with her, saying, "We can't. This was so great. This was so great." And like I said, our son enjoyed it as well. So,
I thought you were gonna say you gave her a hug and you picked her up and you...
yeah, she's currently in our guest room. We'll bring her back next weekend. Okay, I'd like to know if you guys have any bucket list shows that you're dying to do, and let's for a moment keep it within sort of the physical and the financial constraints that you normally have, and then we'll go beyond that and say if you had unlimited resources, what would you do? So let's start with the first half of the question. What bucket list shows are you guys looking to do at Kokandy?
Well, I have two, and actually, it's interesting how you phrase that because even though that I don't even know if we separate the two because if there's yeah, Derek's shaking his head like because we'll figure it out. Like
Amazing.
yeah, yeah. So I don't even know if we make that. At least I don't make that distinction. But and so the two that that I'd love to do and we've tried to do would be the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Fun.
We're that's one we've tried, and I think for whatever reason it's very very restricted, very restricted.
Specifically in Chicago.
Yeah, specifically in Chicago. Yeah, yeah,
I secretly blame the music box.
Restricted meaning they won't allow you to produce it?
Correct.
yes, correct,
Really?
In
correct.
Chicago.
Yeah, in
Huh.
right, right,
That's
right.
unfortunate.
Yeah, and it may be because I always usually request it for like the fall, which is Halloween. So maybe I need to request it during Easter. So I don't know. So that's one, and maybe I'll try for next Easter. And the other one on that's on my list, and it's also like you can't even apply is Les Mis. I would love a storefront Les Mis, but if you're not an equity company, you can't even apply.
Really?
With that, yeah, they
But
used to have some exceptions back in the
yeah,
day.
community theaters do it. Highland Park
Yeah,
just did it a couple of seasons ago.
they got an exception.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because
Yes,
everybody asked them, so they had a statement ready. It was like, wait, how in the hell did you get...
That's not
yes,
very fair.
yes, yeah, yeah. They so yeah, over years there's been exceptions, but that's a property. They really they have the right. So those are kind of my. I mean, there's a few more, but Derek, what's yours?
Um, yeah, I have, yeah, to echo Scott, like, if it feels like we can't do a show for space or budget or time reasons, I think that's an automatic curiosity of, oh, well, let's just figure out how to do it. And I do think something people have come to enjoy from us is seeing how we do bigger shows in our basement. But yeah, ones that I'm kind of drawn to for us really just have to do with like thematic purposes. Like I feel like we're kind of doing the like the sexy, edgy, dark and twisted stuff so like I would love for us to get the Chicago premiere of Teeth in a couple of years.
Oh, nice.
Dead Outlaw seems very up our alley. And then going back a little bit, like those are just the ones that, like, as we see things happening in New York, I text Scott, like, Scott, let's keep an eye on this. But writers did a beautiful Natasha Pierre this season, so
Mm,
like we'll wait a couple of years, but then we'll bring it to the basement, I hope.
yeah.
Um, I think we'd have fun with, a Reefer Madness, a Crybaby, which never gets produced, and I love the hell out of it. I think it's because it's more John Watersy than Hairspray is,
I
and
see.
perhaps too John Watersy for some people.
Yeah.
But yeah, Natasha Pierre is definitely on the list for the next few seasons. Um, and yeah, those are kind of the ones that come to mind right now. I feel like we've, and part of this is intentional, we've kind of fallen into this habit of doing something a little more fun in the summer and then something a little spooky in the fall.
Yeah.
Um, and part of that is, again, I didn't grow up around theater. I grew up with a movie calendar. And in the summer, you watch fun, popcorny movies. And in the fall, you want to watch a horror movie,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's just sort of a subconscious hunger that we all have
Yeah.
for seasonal programming. And those also kind of happen to be the two times in the year, like there's not as much theater in the summer. So if we're doing something a little more like fun and whimsical, that's a reason for people to come inside. And then, yeah, to be on I love seeing our show, be it Sweeney or American Psycho or now Jekyll and Hyde. I like love seeing our stuff in tandem with like the music box of horrors movie marathon, like if you're looking for something spooky, like I
Yeah.
think it's just such a great way to get people in who don't think of themselves as musical theater fans.
Yeah.
So I keep looking for titles, and not just because I think it takes an adaptation. I know people have very loaded feelings about stage to movie adaptations or vice versa, but just like, if it's a title that you know your layperson in Chicago might see and be like, "Oh, that's kind of familiar. I should go check this out. Oh, it's a musical. Oh, it's in a basement." Like I love that journey for people. And then if it's good, they come back. You
Yeah.
know.
Now, you guys both keep mentioning the basement. Are you planning on doing any others in the main stage, or are you just going to be like a trial to see how well it goes, and then you might
Yeah,
do
we're
more?
we're learning a lot this season. In many ways, it wasn't until hearing Scott talk about 100 Days, Amelie is like a full circle back to 100 Days, which is the first show we did in the basement. That was another actor musician driven show. It's hard to find, but it's worth a listen if you haven't heard any of the music. 100 Days, it's a husband and wife songwriter team, the Bangsons. They're out of New York.
Okay.
They do a lot of autobiographical musical storytelling. I'm trying to remember what our tagline was for it. It was like a luminous musical memoir, I think is what we called it. But kind of a singer songwriter coffee house sort of vibe, and that's what originally like drew us to the Chopin.
Right.
But it was six people, all actor musicians, doing the same sort of storytelling that Amelie's doing, like kind of like narrating while playing a violin. And it's also a similar setup space wise. So in many ways, we've come full circle
Right.
in the basement. So the timing just feels kind of right to, yeah, at least try upstairs for one show just to see how it works, see if our audience likes it. I mean, that's kind of
Sure.
the main thing. I want to listen to our audience, and like, are people coming in kind of bummed that they're not going? Is it like, oh, we like going down there and seeing what you've done with it? Because
Yeah.
the setup in the upstairs, while it does have some flexibility, it is kind of a proscenium at heart,
Hmm.
So I think that'll be a good challenge for us to like work with our designers to be like, okay, like now we're not in the right, there's not audience on three sides now. So like what kind of tricks can we do that we don't often get to do? How
Yeah.
can we, what's the different vocabulary of magic for this show? But yeah, right now, just committed to the one show upstairs to kind of, see how we like it. And I assume we'll learn a lot and then go from there.
And how many does it seat upstairs?
It could see we'll probably have Amelie's like 80. This will probably be like 120.
Okay. That's a
Yeah.
nice upgrade, though. Not too overwhelming. Not too
Yeah, it's not
overwhelming.
like
Yeah.
triple or anything. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
the and my hope is because I value the intimacy we're able to create so
Sure.
much. I
Sure.
I, I want to make sure we don't lose that.
How long does Amelie run?
Amelie is currently running until September 28th.
Gotcha.
It's currently sold out for all of August. Um,
Fantastic.
and that's not a humble brag. That's just the
That's
facts.
the facts. Yeah.
Like, if you want to see it, please get tickets. We're squeezing people in as much as we can, and that's wonderful. That's like the best problem in the world to have.
Can you
But
extend,
like,
or are you bound by because of Jekyll and Hyde starting? You can't go beyond the closing date.
we're we're considering it.
Okay, we won't talk anymore about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hope you can if need be. I think it'd be wonderful for the
Yeah.
city for
Well,
sure.
what I do feel comfortable saying. I think there is a lot of excitement around the possibility of extension, but you are very correct that there are all sorts of things within our control and outside of our control that are
Sure,
factors in
as
that
always.
decision making. But like anytime the energy around a show is like this, like the cast is having such a good time and the audiences are having such a good time, and like sales, yes, but also just like it's just such a like wonderful place to be for a couple of hours for so many people. Like,
Yeah,
if we can continue it, would absolutely love to.
that'd be great. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you both because I think it'd be wonderful. So tell our audience how they can learn more about Kokandy Productions and where they can get their tickets for Amelie.
So our website is kokandyproductions.com. So that'll tell you that'll take you to Amelie tickets, but also give you some info about Jekyll and Hyde as we're gearing up for that.
Great.
Also has a nice like past productions page if you want to look at any of the other productions that we've talked about.
I appreciate you both taking the time. Is there anything I didn't cover that you'd like to discuss before we wrap up?
No, appreciate the chat and hope to see you and everyone at the theater.
Yes, I
Absolutely.
I will echo that and to go see Amelie before it closes if you can get your tickets and pray for an extension if not. Thanks for joining us at the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Chicago Theater Makers Podcast is a production of Spirit Art LLC, and our podcast theme music is by Paul Langford. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please drop us a note at our website, shytheatermakerspodcast.com. That's CHITHEATER, makers with an S, podcast.com. We hope you enjoyed spending time with us as much as we enjoyed spending it with you, and we'll see you on the board soon.